let's discuss social learning theories. So let me start with a real world picture. So imagine a middle schooler in Miami. He's not into trouble at first, but his older brother's friends show him how to sneak into an abandoned building and tag it with graffiti. At first, it's exciting. He feels included. Fast forward a year, and those same friends are teaching him how to steal sneakers from a store. Did this kid wake up destined to commit crime? No. He learned it. He's picking up the values and behaviors of the people closest to him. And so that's the essence of social learning theories. They basically say crime isn't a biological glitch or a random choice. It's a product of the people you're around, the norms they hold, and the values they pass on. So we're going to focus on two major theories today. First is the differential association theory by Edwin Sutherland. And this argues that crime's learned from groups we associate with. And the second theory we're focusing on is the differential reinforcement theory by Burgess and Akers. And this adds some psychology to it, saying crime sticks when it's rewarded. Put simply, Sutherland explains how we learn crime, and Burgess and Akers explain why we keep doing it. All right, so Sutherland's theory comes alive when we look at real cases. So let's take Enron. So Enron was once one of the largest energy companies in the United States. And on the surface, Enron was a Wall Street darling. Its stock price soared in the late 1990s, but inside the company, new employees were surrounded by leaders who normalized fraud. So instead of learning integrity, they learned tricks like how to hide debt, how to inflate profits, how to silence whistleblowers. And the culture rewarded deception. And just like Sutherland predicted, employees learn crime from their environment. So the Enron scandal ultimately cost investors billions and destroyed thousands of jobs. But for us, it's the perfect example of differential association. No one was born a fraudster. They were taught how to become one. So there's 9 principles, and let's break these down. Number 1, interaction through communication. So picture 2 teenagers texting late at night. One shares how he snuck past the cameras at Walmart. The other learns and files it away for later. So crime is passed on through words, stories, instructions. Number 2, intimate groups matter most. Think of a little kid learning to tie shoes. They don't watch a stranger do that. They learn how to tie their shoes from their mom, their dad, and sibling. Same thing with crime. You don't copy random strangers. You copy the people you trust. Number 3, learning techniques. Imagine a family recipe that's passed down like from your grandma to you. You don't just know grandma's spaghetti sauce exists. You learn the steps, the ingredients, the secret trick that goes into making it grandma's spaghetti. Crime works the same way. You don't just know stealing's possible. You learn how to do it. Sutherland also said that not everyone views the law as sacred. Some people see it like speed limits, like you kind of see those as optional, flexible, only really enforced if the police officer's right behind you or sitting on the side of the road. And then there's frequency, duration, priority, intensity. Imagine this as a recipe for influence. A best friend you see daily is like adding salt to every meal. Over time, it shapes the flavor of everything you eat. A distant cousin, that's like a spice you pull out once a year. It won't change your diet. And imitation, that's powerful. Think about TikTok dances. Nobody writes down instructions. Instead, you just watch, you mimic, you repeat. Same with crime. All right, moving on. So now let's talk about needs and values. Crime often looks like a shortcut. Let's say you need money, so you steal it. What if you want respect? You earn it through intimidation. What if you're looking at crime for excitement? Example, joyriding gives you a rush. But here's the kicker. Role models. People copy those they admire. Picture a young sibling watching their older brother. If the older brother cheats on a test and brags, the younger one thinks that's how it's done. Now raise the stakes. If the admired person sells drugs, steals cars, commits fraud, the message is even louder. And this is what Sutherland's theory, or why Sutherland's theory is so important. It isn't just about random peer pressure. It's about the people we respect who set the tone for what's acceptable. So think back on your life. Who did you look up to when you were growing up? And what lessons did you learn from them? Positive or negative lessons? All right. So Burgess and Akers expanded on Sutherland by bringing in psychology. And their differential reinforcement theory says people repeat behaviors that are rewarded and avoid those that are punished. So if a team shoplifts and then gains respect from peers or even a thrill from doing it, those are rewards that reinforce the crime. On the other hand, if they're caught, humiliated, punished, that would discourage the behavior. Burgess and Akers also emphasized imitation. Sometimes you don't even need reinforcement. You just see someone do it and copy it. And that's why we see copycat crimes after big headlines or viral TikTok challenges that cross into criminal behavior. People learn by watching. So here's the big takeaway. Social learning theories argue that crime isn't random or inevitable. It's taught, modeled, and reinforced by the people around us. That means prevention isn't just about police and prisons. It's about who we surround ourselves with, who we admire, and what behaviors are rewarded in our communities. So here's my closing question for you. What modern example comes to mind where peers, families, even social media taught or rewarded crime? Think about gang culture, online challenges, the workplace fraud that we talked about at the beginning of this lecture. All right, so that wraps up my lecture for today on social learning theories. Have a great one.